Welcome to another episode of the Marathon Mindset Podcast. Today I got a special guest today. Somebody I've been wanting to have on the podcast for a long time, and every time he keeps dodging me. So I'm glad that my brother Hunter is here today, and welcome, man.
Thanks. It has been a long time.
It has.
You've been trying forever.
So happy that you're here. Make time out of your busy schedule. We'll get into that a little bit more too. But I'll give a little intro and then you can kind of elaborate on yourself. So
Okay.
I've known Hunter for a little while because we met in Jiu-Jitsu, but from that, we've sold some houses but at the same time, I've got to get closer to you, and you are in the scrap business. And so having a scrap yard business and seeing the intricacies of that business and behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
My limited knowledge was aluminum cans and just taking them to get recycled and get you a couple of bucks. But seeing it from your side and seeing it in the operation that you guys do, I wanted to get you on the podcast to talk about that, but at the same time, kind of like what got you into that and everything else. But do you have a little bio?
Oh man, a bio.
Short
don't
bio. We don't have that much time. Right?
Yeah.
Short bio.
Yeah, I'm in the scrap metal recycling industry. It's awesome. I love it. Been doing it since I was kind of a kid, sort of, if I wanted to go in on the weekend with my dad. To give a little background, my dad has always been in the metal recycling industry. And, yeah, eventually I ended up going to work for him. But I always used to go up to the scrapyard on the weekends when I was a kid. Not all the time.
Yeah.
My dad was pretty hardcore, so he was like, I remember like waking up on Saturdays and being like, "Where's Dad?" Because he worked every Saturday.
Yeah.
And then he was already gone. And then he'd be like, "Well, if you're not up, can't go
with me." Yeah.
My dad doesn't even sound like that. I mean, you know my dad well too.
Yeah.
So, but that was pretty much it. So like I had to already be up and like waiting. And now that I'm older and into the industry and I have kids, lots of kids, I kind of get where he was at because you want your kids to experience stuff like that, but at the same time, you're trying to get stuff done, and the scrapyard can be a very dangerous place. So,
I was thinking about that last night. Just in general, like, a lot of people don't get access like I do with you and stuff and being around the yard. And I was thinking about the heavy machinery and just stuff that could happen and you're not paying attention, et cetera.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I want to get into with your dad because so it's a family business. He's been in the business for all his life, pretty much, right?
Pretty much forever, man.
Yeah. And you have brothers and sisters?
Yes. I have brothers and sisters.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I mean, we just call each other brother and sister. Some of them are step and whatever, but we were all kind of raised together. But so I have 2 brothers and 4 sisters.
So none of them are in the scrap business?
No.
Okay. So when he would take you or when you'd want to go and et cetera, like, is that what made you want to get in the scrap business? Like, or did you always want to be in it? Or would you like?
I always wanted to be in it.
Yeah.
I always just had a love for destroying things. And I mean, that's pretty much, we get paid to destroy stuff. And like, I was a terror when I used to go up there with him, long time ago. And I would just break everything I could possibly find. It was awesome because you could.
Yeah.
Didn't really get in trouble.
Yeah.
But I know when I graduated high school, I didn't necessarily, I wasn't thinking about this at the time, but I think now that I look back at it, I didn't want to just go into like a family business.
Yeah.
And at that time, my dad finally opened his own scrapyard and had it for a couple of years and everything like that. Actually, a long time. I think he opened Great Northwest Recycling in 1996, I think. I graduated high school in 2004.
Okay.
And subconsciously, I think I just didn't want, like, I wanted to go find myself, kind of, you know, and I was real big, even at that age, I was real big in, like, hey, go try stuff, experience stuff. You don't have to know what you want to do. I think we put a lot of pressure on young people nowadays to, like, know what you want to do, plan out your future and all that. It's like, man, no, there's plenty of time for that. So I tried a couple different things first, you know, like I framed houses.
Okay.
I did a lot of land clearing. I've cleared land, you know. I grew up in Bernie, and I grew up in San Antonio, then Bernie. Even spent some time in Kentucky. I graduated from Kentucky.
High school?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No.
Yeah.
Huh.
My dad took he had Great Northwest Recycling, but the scrap industry was not doing really good at that point. He took a consulting job for a aluminum smelter in Kentucky.
What's that?
Where they melt aluminum down.
Okay.
Make new aluminum products.
Yeah.
And so he took that job, and I had just gotten or granted access to go live with him because my parents were divorced. And so, that all just happened at the same time. And then he was like, hey,
you want to go?
I know you just got the chance to live with me, but I'm going to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Because he was consulting, and then they wanted to hire him on. So I was like, okay. So I went and visited him during the summer to make sure it was something I wanted to do. But I already knew, like, I wanted to move with my dad.
Yeah.
And I was going to be a junior in high school. So if I moved with him, I'd start my junior year there in Kentucky.
Huh.
So I moved there that summer and went to high school there in Henderson, Kentucky, and graduated there in 2004. And as soon as I graduated, I moved back here and tried some different things out, like framing houses, land clearing. I even installed water storage tanks for people's well houses and stuff like that for a while.
Okay.
Just didn't really find anything too much that I wanted. And then I was like, man, I just always felt this attraction and pull to the scrapyard. So I was like, you know what? It kind of made me, in a sense, it kind of was like a failure on my part, I guess, because I just didn't find anything I liked or what it was. And I was like, well, I guess I just didn't want everyone to be like, oh, you know, wish my parents owned a company that I could go work for, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I think subconsciously I wanted to try to prove myself like I could make it without.
Right. I don't need my family.
I don't need
business.
my family to make it on my own.
Gotcha.
But I just
you didn't like
I just liked being around scrap metal. It's just fun. The smells of it, everything about it is really fun. So but at the time, that was only, I mean, I was still, those other jobs were very short-lived.
Okay.
So I was still 18 years old, and I told my dad, I was like, hey, you know, I want to come work for you. And he was still in Kentucky at the time, but he had a manager that was running his scrapyard here in San Antonio. And so I told him I wanted to go work for him, and he was like, yeah, just call the manager and schedule an interview or whatever. And I was like a little confused. I'm like, you own the company. Get the job. Yeah. He's like, hey, you know, my manager doesn't want you working there. You're not going to work there. And I was like, at the time I was like, man, it's a little hardcore, but okay. I didn't understand it all at the time. I'm really glad he was that way with me though. But I mean, I'll start off by saying there's no one that I look up more to than my dad. You know, and I'm sure a lot of people say that about their fathers, but him for sure. And so I did. I went, had lunch with the manager, kind of like an interview, and I remember in the interview I was asking him, I was like, hey, you know, like, well, what will my first job be there at the scrapyard? You know, if I come on board. And he was like, well, you're gonna unbag customers' aluminum cans, you know. And I just looked at him like, oh, okay. Like, I was just going along with it. But, like, I remember this day, like, as soon as that was all over with, like, I remember calling my dad, and I was like, hey, like, he wants me to unload customers' cans, like, unbag their aluminum cans. I was like, I was doing that when I was a kid. Like, if I went up to work with him on a Saturday, I would help the customers in the cans. And so I was like, in my head, I was like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just disclaimer. I have a mouth like a sailor. I'm going to cuss a lot in here. So sorry. But he was like, hey, you know, you got to start from the bottom, man.
Yeah.
Like now you're on the payroll and you need to start from the bottom. And, you know, that's what he wants you to do. That's what you're going to do. And he's like, if you don't like it, you can go get another job somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, and did you know he's only going to pay me minimum wage? Like $7.25, man.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, that's where you're going to be at. You don't know shit, you know, pretty much. And so I was like, whatever. You know, when you're 18, you just don't really care anyways. Right. I was like, whatever. A little butthurt about it, but I did it, and it was the best thing. And, you know, I'm going to do the same thing with my kids if they want to get into it, you know. I've even told, you know, my oldest, Drew, who's in college now, goes to Texas Tech. But at one point when we were talking about his future, you know, he was like, well, I might come work for you. And I was like, okay, man. I was like, you can. Yeah. But I'm going to let you know, like, you know me as dad. Yeah. You don't know me as boss. Yeah. And I was like, and it's going to be a little bit different. He asked me the same question. Well, what will I start doing? Because I used to take Drew up to the scrapyard with me to help me with stuff too. Yeah. And that's the thing is I was like, I know how to do so much though. Right. I have to start at the bottom. Right. But it's good because it's humbling. And I told him the same thing. Start with cans. And then like we kind of just slowly ended that conversation. And then, and the next thing I know, he's like, I'm going to go to college. Yeah. So before I go into the thing with your dad and everything else, what you went into the military. When did you do that? That was after I worked for my dad. So I went to go work for him when I was 18, and then I was 20 years old. So I worked for him for about 2 years. Okay. Yeah. And being in the military is something I just always wanted to do.
But what made you go like all of a sudden, like you're working with your dad already?
I was, because I was like, you know, I watched a lot of war movies all the time, stuff like that. So I tried to join the Army Rangers when I was 17. Okay. In Kentucky, and took the ASVAB and did all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, I want to be an Army Ranger and all this stuff. But since I was 17, my dad had to sign off on it. And, you know, him and my second mom, they were like, don't you know there's a war going on, you know? And I was like, yeah. And I thought, what better way to prove yourself as a man, you know? Like, this is how you're thinking when you're younger, right? Yeah. And he was like, pretty much, the recruiter even came and talked to him at the house and all that stuff. And, you know, like, he wasn't going to sign off on it. And I was like, and he kind of talked me out of it, too. And I was like, okay, you know, I'll wait. Then I got preoccupied with other things. I just didn't do it. Yeah. And, but then eventually I was like, still wanted to, man, my time's slipping. Like, and I just kept thinking to myself, I don't want to wake up 10 years down the road or whenever it is, years down the road and be like, just constantly wondering what it would have been like if I was in the military. Yeah. So I was like, no, like I told him, I was like, hey man, I'm going to go to the military. He was like pissed off at first. Like he was not happy about it. Yeah. Especially because, you know, as any father would, because there's a war going on and all the other stuff. And, you know, but also because he was like, well, you know, I was going to move back and you were going to, you know, start learning more and start taking over more operations and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, sorry. Yeah. He's like, well, I don't want you to do it. And I was like, well, I already signed up. And he was like, God damn it. You know, like, yeah. So yeah, he wasn't happy about it at first. He understands now, but I think he's really proud of all the accomplishments I've done, but at the time was not happy about it. So
it's so familiar because my dad had the same experience.
Yeah. When he was younger.
Yeah. I mean, he volunteered to go to Vietnam.
Wow.
And my
that's even more. That's a lot more hardcore though.
And my grandfather tried to go to the recruiter's office and be like, no, he can't go. And like, he already signed up. Like he's an adult. And like literally they got in this big fight and he was like, I'm going. And it was like forever like that they had this little thing because he was like, no, you're going to go work. You're going to go to school, all this stuff. And I was like the first time he ever told his dad no. And it came full circle to him when I, you know, did this, not going to the military, but told him, no, I'm going to go do this, you know. But that's funny because it was the same scenario.
Dang, I know, man.
And you met him, so.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's awesome.
But
yeah.
So you did 4?
Yeah, I did 4 years. I had no intention of staying in at all.
Did you go to war?
Yeah, I went to Iraq twice. I was in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And I was in a unit called 1st Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion, and I was a scout. So I was basic infantryman, but in that kind of battalion, you become a scout.
Yeah.
Sit in the back of these LAVs and call scouts out. Clear houses, clear the road, do route reconnaissance, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had a blast. I got to learn a lot about the world.
Yeah.
And how it really works and how it really spins around. I mean, it's funny because I always tell people all the time, I'm like, there's no way in hell I ever want my kids to serve in the military.
Why?
Just because I'm older now and I understand how things really work and how the world really spins around even more. And from my experience, and there is nothing going on right now where I feel like we really need to defend ourselves. And if it came down to that, it's a different story, you know. If it has to be done, it has to be done. But it's been a long time since, in my opinion, since we've needed to be somewhere.
Yeah.
Well,
and the wars are different now, right? The way they're fought.
Yeah.
A little bit. So
for sure. But yeah, I just don't want them to. And then they have to deal with the kind of stuff that I deal with, and I'm like, it's just not worth it, Unless it was for something that is worth it,
Yeah.
Like if we're about to have all our freedoms and liberties stripped from us, like no shit, not all this bullshit that politicians speak so that we can go, make people money. If it's no shit, something like that, so it's a whole different story. But I just don't see that happening for a while, and maybe it could, and if it does, it does. But if that's not going on, I'd prefer them to experience a lot of other things before going into the military.
Yeah.
And like I said, I never wanted to be in for life or anything. I was just going to do 4 years and just say I did it, done it, it's under my belt, and moving on, which is what I did. And my whole military career is a whole nother story, too, because it was like, I bet.
I mean, knowing you and knowing, you being in the Marine Corps and everything else, and I don't think I've ever told you, maybe I have, but I want to do it on the podcast, so thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks, man. Pretty sure you probably have.
I remember. But the reason why I wanted to have you on is because me watching you operate, like, I think you're different in the sense of mentality, right? In the sense of there's not a lot of people who go into the family business and operate the way you do. And what I mean by that is most of them do the bare minimum.
Oh yeah.
One of them, they're like, I didn't create it. It's not, but yeah, it's my family business, and I'm here. I get it. Like you said, like when you were 18, you thought, oh, I'm gonna be this, I'm gonna do that, but your dad did it the right way and was like, no, you start from the bottom, you're gonna learn everything, and et cetera. And then seeing you operate and watching you build Bracken from the ground up, and seeing you operate your dad's when he's not, actively in the, working in the business, you doing most of it, like going, you didn't have to be that motivated, that, you know what I mean, that driven to be like, I want it to be successful in your own way.
For sure.
And that's why, like, I'm like, it's not just because it's scrapyard. It's not just because, it's you. It's just the fact that, like, how you operate. And we have conversations through, our friendship and through our dealings and everything else that I take away from how you think. Right.
That's awesome.
But
man.
I mean, it's just that's the reason why. And when you think about that, and you mentioned that you have a large family with your kids, like, they have to, that's the example, right? We have to set the example and whatever. And so when you hear, like, you wanted to kind of change that narrative of like, oh yeah, I want to have a family business and be given something. And I think you kind of have that chip still, like, where you're like, I'm prove, like, nothing was given to me. Yeah. And I'm going to show, like, this, let me show you, but you do it in a very humble way.
Yeah, I can tell you 100%. My dad is the type of guy where if I wasn't pulling my weight,
he cut you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I wasn't pulling my weight, he would. But I mean, I definitely could have flown under the radar, as we
Yeah.
call it,
Yeah.
and just, done
Yeah.
bare minimum, gotten by, collect a paycheck,
Yeah.
go on. But, it's just drive, right? Like, you just always
So
have a drive to.
do you get that? Do you think you get that from your dad? Seeing him operate, or is it?
Most definitely, some of it comes from him. I've had to learn a lot of things on my own, and I've brought a lot of stuff to the business, and the business wouldn't be there without him and my mom,
right?
And it just wouldn't be there. But it's a lot easier to come in and improve on something that's already there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how most things that are invented become
to.
better.
Yeah.
The first round of something, people are like, oh, that's kind of cool, but it doesn't really take off. And then someone else comes along and is like, hey, but if we switch this and did that, but that's a lot easier to do,
Right.
So I still give all the credit to him, but then there's little things here and there that I look at, it's easier. I'm really good at looking at something and saying, hey, what can we do to improve it? And being honest. I mean, man, I would say that's probably one of the best characteristics that anyone can have if they want to be, have the marathon mindset or whatever. It's like being honest with yourself, like truly being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And you go to sleep at night and you think like, yeah, I did a pretty good job today,
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just lying to yourself because you're like, no, you were lazy, you procrastinated, you did this, you did that. And but for the person that can sit there and be like, you know what, I did a fucking shitty job today.
Yeah.
And then be like, I'm going to fucking change that.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it differently tomorrow. And then actually go through with the change. So that's a big thing.
Self-awareness.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
100%. And so, yeah. And just for a little bit of background, so my dad started his company, and then I worked for him, and I still work for his company, but I have no ownership in it. But then I found this spot. We found it. And remember, you actually helped us close that deal and on buying that location.
It was funny because let's talk about how our journey started, right?
Well, let me just finish this part.
Okay,
so everyone knows.
Yeah.
So then I convinced him finally. I tried to get him to get another location. So we just did it as a separate company. And then, so I'm the majority shareholder of that company. And then him and my mom are
the other one.
But yes, the other owners. So that one I pretty much started from scratch and was able to take it off, and it was pretty awesome. But we can go back.
So, I mean, I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, and I didn't do the math of like when that was, what year that was.
2014.
2014.
Mm-hmm.
So we were rolling. We met at in jiu-jitsu class, and we were rolling, and I started a little bit before you. So I know it was a little.
No, dude, you were a purple belt when I first started at the place, man.
Yeah. So what that means is I was more experienced, and so I could tap him out. But you're strong, so you were a big dude, and so like you would muscle stuff, and I remember you didn't quit. Like you always wanted to come in and challenge and be like, I'm gonna get you, and so we had a lot of mat time. And I remember you asking me, like almost clear as day, where you were like, so what do you do? And then we started that conversation, and you had a house that was a rental, I believe. And you were like, oh, maybe let's talk about maybe selling it or whatever. And that's kind of how it started then. Yeah. And so I helped you sell that. But then and then just like we've done multiple properties since then.
Oh, yeah, man. I know, it's crazy.
And, but I remember you saying like, hey, you help me, my dad, like we were looking at another location. But it was funny. I was thinking about when you would invite me to your office. So during the time we were selling the first house or even your second, like you'd invite me to your office at Great Northwest. And that's when I got to see kind of like the behind the scenes of a scrapyard. And I'm just like, this is more than just recycling cans. And and then listening to you, and your dad was in the office at the time. And I remember just having those conversations and just being there. I just wanted to sit there all day. It felt like it could be its own show. Like it could be its own like reality show. But at the same time, it literally felt that like I just wanted to know more, and we've I kind of got more information about it, and then you hit me up and you were like, hey, we're thinking about another location, and I was like, okay, and we were thinking land at the time, and then we started looking at other places in the north side of town, and we actually rented 2 different properties because you were to try them out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we did a lease to purchase on Bracken,
yeah.
and then we did the other one. We just rent. The guy didn't want to do.
Yeah, and so, and then we ended up purchasing the one in Bracken, and then it was like a silo with dirt, and that was pretty much it, and maybe like that back piece in the back.
Well, it's funny because I went to the gun range like years before that with with Drew and Keegan. Mm-hmm. Took him to the gun range, and that place was for sale. And this was years before all this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hey, boy, stay in the truck right here, and I kind of hopped the fence. And I was like, man, this would be an awesome location for a scrapyard. It'd be so good. And at that time, I tried to talk to Dad, and he was like, I don't want to, which is understandable. He has gone through trial and tribulation, of the ups and downs of owning your own business and all that stuff. And he's seen the worst of it and had to really figure out how to make things work. And then he was super successful and didn't know the bank any money, had everything paid off, all this stuff. And, at his age too, you got to think like, you're kind of settled down with taking risk, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I totally understood it, but I begged and begged. And then when we were looking again, finally, that it was for sale again.
Yeah. And so, but then seeing it, like how you set it up from when we bought it to you setting it up now and where it's at, and just seeing the evolution of it, it's pretty amazing, bro. I mean, just in how long you've been in business, you went through COVID, you went through all these things, but at the same time still seeing it, and you're operating it almost as successfully or as successfully as your dad, even more, right? And so, and to have the 2 yards in the family like that, like, I don't know, I think it's amazing, dude. I think it's pretty cool to your credit, and to your dad's credit as well, to kind of like show you the ropes and et cetera. But let's talk about the scrap industry a little bit, just to give context to the complexity, because I don't think I wish you still had your Instagram when you were like starting to do videos and you were tearing stuff up, and it was.
You mean my YouTube?
Your YouTube,
yes.
But you did post stuff on Instagram from the YouTube. But what was the handle? It was
Scrappy McScrapper.
Scrappy McScrapper.
That was the handle on my Instagram at that time. Yeah,
and so I even
McScrapper.
put you in my phone as Scrappy, like it was like Hunter Scrappy Triesch. Like I remember, but
a lot of people have me in their phone as weird things, man. Trash cans.
So when I thought it was just aluminum cans and just the metal, and then when I got to see the back end of it, but when we had conversations of like how the business actually makes money, like you're on the like commodity markets, like you're watching almost like a stockbroker, kind of like those markets, and explain that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So as we say in the military, break it down Barney style for people.
There you go.
So there's all different types of levels of scrap yards and scrap commodities and all kinds of things like that. Where we kind of sit is there's a lot of middlemen before it can get to where it needs to go to be recycled.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, well, I'll go into that later. But pretty much, to break it down pretty simple, is we buy scrap metal, junk metal, whatever it is, refrigerators, washers, dryers, aluminum. We're open to the public. We buy from big businesses. We deal with demo companies. I mean, you name it, all different types of companies. And they bring in scrap. We take it, we separate it, we clean it, we produce it. We get it to whatever we get it to whatever means it to be able to ship it out, because everything's prepared differently, and everything costs different amount of money to prepare. to be able to ship out. You know, certain people and certain mills want it certain ways. So anyways, you bring in a piece of aluminum, and we buy that piece of aluminum, and then we have a margin that we have set for how much we need to make on it to make enough profit to pay for everything, and then make some profits to grow the company. So we make that margin, and then, but we're also, sometimes we pre-sell, sometimes we hold on to material, you know, in like copper and stuff, you sell in contracts, and you kind of just have to, it's kind of like playing the stock market sometimes with certain materials, some things it's not, it's very complex. But then we sell that to like an aluminum smelter, right? Once we have enough. So if we get a whole truckload, which is, you know, your net weight is 44,000 pounds of material in there. That's where you try to get it around. And so when I sell a contract, if I sell like aluminum sheet, you know, I'll say, yeah, you know, I want to sell 3 truckloads or whatever. But if it's just one truckload, it's 44,000 pounds. So we have to get enough of that. And if we think the market's going down, we might, you know, pre-sell. If we think it's going to go up, we'll hold off on selling and we'll just collect it. So,
but you have to have enough space.
You do. And you take there's a lot of risk and stuff like that. And, you know, I listen a lot to like a lot of the older people in our industry, you know, and a lot of them that have been through it all will tell you like, hey, don't speculate. Just buy it, make the profit you set out to make, and sell it. And count your money in the bank at the end of the day instead of worrying about how the hell you're going to make money, your cash flow and stuff. So anyways, but that's how we make our money. We're just middlemen, right? But it needs to be repaired. And people don't bring things in exactly how they need to be to go to the mill. And the mills, some of the mills can be very, very picky, especially domestically. You know, we export a lot of stuff all over the world. But domestically, they can be very, very picky. And so then we have to process it all. You know, we either have to clean stuff on it or, you know, bale it, cut it up, box it, like you name it. And then we sell it. So that's how we make our money. Or, you know, like just iron. You know, if you brought us, someone had an old barbecue pit that's just all rusted out, doesn't work. You bring it in. We pay you, and then we sell it for a little bit of margin. But the thing is, you have to have enough money. So we also buy from some other companies that collect scrap metal or that are maybe smaller, buy from them as well.
To fill the container.
So they obviously, like, that's what the name of the game is, volume, right? So the more volume you bring me. I mean, you know, if I can deal with one guy and he brings this much volume versus dealing with 50 people, I mean, that's a lot. And especially in today's climate and society. And you never know who you're going to deal with. So if you know who you're dealing with and it's one person to bring you a lot, well, of course you're going to pay him more, you know, because you know it's easily done. But a lot of times we buy from people like that because they don't have the cash flow to wait to get paid, because, you know, the more you can wait, the more you're going to get paid, right? You get a better price and stuff like that. And the more you can sell at one time, you're going to, it's the same thing.
I mean, I remember when you were doing computer chips. I remember that you had somebody breaking down like old computers and stuff like that. And I was seeing like just all of that stuff, how it was manual labor, like just having them to break it down and everything else. But just that process of breaking it all down, storing it, you know, that's why you gotta have all these crazy machines and stuff like that. So it was kind of cool seeing your YouTube videos where you were showing the machines that you do get to operate and then tearing stuff up and whatever. So just being able, like, I wish you still, man, your YouTube, we talked about it. Your YouTube channel would have been like viral, bro.
By now it probably would have been big, man. I think that was like 7 or 8 years ago.
They would have been paying you to keep doing videos.
I know. Well, and that's the funny thing is, like, people don't understand, like, those machines, like, they cost a lot of money. Like, I owe the bank a lot of money. That's the thing. Most people, you know, I have a lot of friends like, man, I wish I owned a scrapyard, you know. And I'm like, man, most of y'all don't have the mental capacity to, and this isn't to like beat down on anyone, but like they're just not used to it. They don't have the mental capacity to go to sleep at night, like knowing how much money you owe the bank, and like being like, man, this was a shitty month. This next month's gonna be shitty too.
No, the stress level. I mean, like I said, when I was in the office and being just listening to conversations, kind of a fly on the wall. Yeah, like, and seeing the operation, the front of the office, and where they're collecting payment, and then seeing all the guys in the back, and then seeing the machines, and then y'all in the office and kind of discussing what all this stuff is going on. I was like, damn, that's a lot. It's not just like dealing with clients and that's it. It's like it's this whole ecosystem.
Oh yeah,
within it. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I can see how the stress level could be nuts.
Oh yeah, and you're trying to help the people that work with you as well.
Yeah.
You're always trying to help them out and settle all their stuff. And which, by the way, I just have to say, like, I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't have some of the awesome men and women that work with us.
But I think that's a testament to, like, what you said about being honest. Like, you've talked briefly before about other scrapyards and families in San Antonio and just in general in the world, right, in the country, of how they operate. Mm-hmm. And not all of them are, some are cutthroat and some are, dishonest, and they get reputations and et cetera.
Oh, big time. Especially back in the 80s. Yeah. I mean, man, you probably would be making a very fair statement if you said that every scrapyard owner was a crook.
See?
And it's there's a stigma there.
Yeah.
And then, I still deal with customers to this day. They're just like, oh, you're just screwing me, you're all screwing me. And that's all set back from back then. From back in the day, you know? And those guys used to make a killing.
Yeah.
And I have told people this. I'm like, it's a lot harder for some of these old timers, that don't get young people to come in because they're still doing it the old school way.
Yeah.
And this just doesn't work, man. And what's the point of screwing somebody over? Like, I would rather make less money off of you and you come in until you die, like every time you have scrap metal, you're bringing it to me because you're like, dude, that guy's honest.
Yeah.
I'd rather do that, than just screw you over one time. And then you're just like,
never bringing you anything.
Because eventually someone's going to find out
that
you're screwing them over.
Yeah. And I think that's so going back to, like, the example with your dad, and then, seeing how long Great North, you said it started in 96. Mm-hmm. So that's when I graduated high school. So, I mean, that's a long time that they're still operating, and it's still there, and it's still, it's this big operation there, and then now Bracken. So yeah, I think that's a testament to both you and your dad.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's pretty gnarly.
So let's talk about, I don't know, you dream, like, what do you like? Do you just, you're cool with Bracken, or what if you had all the money in the world?
If I had all the money in the world,
what would you do, like, business wise?
I don't know. I'm always like wanting to get into that's something I've found about myself is, I would love to open another scrap yard at some point, or do something else that's in the scrap industry. But it's, me.
Yeah.
I get tired of stuff. Especially
this is
houses.
Why he's moved so much, people. This is why we've sold so many houses, because it's not.
But, like, honestly, me. I'm not a very materialistic person.
No, you're not.
I really am not. But it's just something about houses and where I live, and I'm just like, okay, I'm ready for something new, And I've always just kind of been that way. So, I've thought about lots of other things, but right now I'm kind of in the sustain.
Because how long Bracken's been open? It's been
since 2014. We opened in 2014 as a DBA, but 2015 it was officially like its own company.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's been a while. I've actually talked to. It's a good topic to talk about. Sustainability, right? Like,
yeah.
So Dominic.
Yeah.
He's the manager at Bracken Recycling. Handles all the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
He's a rock star. He's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I've had to tell him before, because he gets in these moods or modes where he's just like, man, I just don't feel like we're accomplishing anything. And I'm like, and I love that my guys can come and talk to me about stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's good to open your mouth about things like that. Some people don't, and they just go along and they just let their life be miserable, and it's good to talk about it. But, I told him, I was like, hey, man, you're not alone. Trust me, I've had those before, and I've had those times when I'm just like really down on myself because I'm like, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel like I'm not doing anything. And I was like, but sometimes You know, you're always doing major things, doing major changes, starting this, buy a new machine, you know, go buy a $500,000 machine and do this and do that. And I was like, but sometimes, you know, you can't grow too fast. So sometimes you just have to sustain. And those times suck because you're not going to see a lot of new stuff.
Not flashy. It's not. Yeah.
But it's important because, I mean, you have to manage the sustainability well, too.
Yeah.
You know, and that's harder to do.
Yeah.
Because it's monotonous.
It's monotonous, yeah.
Yeah. And so
kind of goes back to jiu-jitsu because like,
for sure.
I mean, I relate everything to jiu-jitsu and you know this,
Yeah.
but like once you get to a certain level, you're like, I don't want to drill anymore. Like I know that move already. But at the same time, like the better you get at it, the easier it is to pull off. And you stop drilling or you stop because you're like, it's just so monotonous. You don't want to do those. You just want to go roll and try to do all those other things. But sorry.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so the sustainability business, and then I mean, but what are you thinking that like now you're in that sustainable mode? But are you getting that itch to like?
I would like to owe the bank less money before I go off and do other things.
Gotcha.
That's the main thing.
Gotcha.
Because I've never been the type that likes to owe a lot of money.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's how you have to go about it if you want to start your own company, if you don't know a lot of people with a whole lot of money.
100%.
If you don't want partners,
Yeah.
you know, controlling and dictating what you have to do. I'm really bad with that. Like, I would not do good.
So
Other people.
And your dad's already kind of like.
No, he's still very involved.
Okay.
Yeah, he's still very involved.
Okay.
And he likes to be involved, but he is like, I would say he's semi-retired.
Yeah.
You know, he's enjoying his life, which, you know, rightfully so.
How old is he?
He should. I think he'll be 70 technically next year, January.
Okay.
January 23rd is his birthday, and I believe he'll be 70. Don't judge me. I don't even know how old. My dad had to tell me how old I was one year. He's like, I'm 37 now. It's like when I was like 34 or something. I was like, yeah, I'm 33. He was like, Hunter, you are 34. I was like, no, I'm not. Like, yes, you are. And I just looked at it. I was like, oh, shit, you're right. I don't know, man. I'm not good at that. So, you know, this is kind of shifting gears a little bit, but you know, my dad, he is dyslexic, and he dropped out of high school when he was 18. They pretty much told him he had to go to summer school, and he was like, I'm not doing that. Yeah. So like he went in the scrap business, ended up getting in the scrap business, and you know, kind of started at the bottom and worked his way up.
I mean, he just picked the scrap business, or he knew somebody?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how that worked. He may have known. I think maybe my uncle was working for somebody. I can't remember, but somehow he got into it, you know, whether it was another family member that got him over there or whatever. But, you know, and then he was just really good at figuring things out and problem solving. I mean, it's something they just don't teach anymore. Problem solving skills have gone to zero. But it's okay because we have AI now and it'll take care of all that for us.
So talk when you're talking about your people, right? And that you guys have really good people. I know now with kind of like, after COVID and things have changed a little bit, like the labor force is kind of, you know, we've talked about it where it's just kind of different. What kind of challenges and things with your people and hiring?
Oh man, the same challenges that every single other business have. I mean, I deal with a lot of business owners and we all talk about the same thing all the time. Yeah. I mean, it's just, and from industry to industry, it's just different all the time. But yeah, people just don't want to work. They don't want to. There's a lot to it. I mean, this would take a long time to talk about. But so with the younger generation, and by the way, I think it's important to always have someone from the younger generation involved in your organization. You know, like it took me, you know, like it was like pulling hair to get my dad to do some things that just I know in his mind they just didn't seem right. Yeah. You know,
I remember being there for some conversations.
Oh yeah. We have conversations. We have yelling arguments. We have a crazy time. My wife is always like, y'all have the weirdest relationship in the world. Yeah. Cause, even if we're screaming or yelling at each other, we always finish the conversation with, I love you. Yeah. You know, like that's something big with us. Yeah. And but yeah, so it's very important to have, and I hope, like me seeing that happen now,
Yeah.
I'm always like, okay, I need to remember that for later when I'm in my 50s and 60s, hell, my 40s, you know, like I need to remember, like,
Gotta be open-minded.
you have to be open-minded.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you should go and listen to every idea that some
Sure.
young person has, but you
Sure.
need to be open-minded and be able to look at it and judge for yourself if that, be like, this kind of doesn't feel right, but you know, they are from the younger generation, because we won't understand it. You
see
can't
it differently.
Yeah, you think you can, but you just can't.
Yeah.
So it's important. But as far as, you know, some of the younger generation, I don't want to say it's all their fault or anything, you know, it's the way they're being brought up now and things like that, and what they have to bring them up with technology and everything else. But
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things, I mean, there's a lot of big things, but one of them is like their instant gratification. We are seeing generation that has had instant gratification at their fingertips for their entire life. What I mean by that is, like, if they need to know something, or if they need whatever, they can just hop on their phone. Or if they're feeling bad, they can hop on their Instagram and post something and feel better, or feel worse.
Yeah.
When someone doesn't like their stuff. I
was talking to Josh about that yesterday. I literally was like, we grew up different, right? I mean, I guess 8 years. You said you're 37, so we're 8 years apart. But we grew up different, where we didn't have the internet, right? So it wasn't as fast, or instant, like you're talking about. So, but we grew up fine, right? And so now it's different. Like, they have everything, and so I think that it's like they have this. Well, that they erase everything that happened from their generation previous, and it's like, well, that doesn't count because it's now, and they kind of disregard previous, like you're talking about your dad, like you building on what your dad provided, like having that experience / already been built, and then you can improve upon it. I don't think they see it that way. I don't think that they see if improving on what's already been done.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think a lot of young people need guidance, because they're definitely not getting in the public education system. Sorry, I'm going to talk a little bit of shit about it. But, you know, before I start talking about all this other just BS stuff, I just want to make one point that our country, this is in my opinion, our country has become so tribal, and it's like, oh, well, if you're either all the way over here, you're all the way over here, or whatever, and it's like, and so aggressive towards each other, and it's like, man, you know how many friends I have? Like, you know, most people just assume that I'm just diehard, like bleed red, conservative, blah, 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 which, like, yeah, I have conservative traditional values and things like that, but it doesn't, just because I believe in certain things doesn't mean I'm going to join you in all your other stuff.
Right.
And just because you and I disagree on something, or you vote for one person, I vote for another, like that, it doesn't mean we can't be friends.
Right.
And honestly, to me, you're a weak person to me if you're like, oh, that person voted for Biden, blah, blah, blah. So you want nothing to do with him?
Right.
You know, I mean, he could be your next best business partner. You have no idea, you know?
Right.
But you're automatically just closing that off, closing that door.
Right.
You know, and I just think it's ridiculous. And I think people are stupid when they think that way. And like,
it goes back to the open-mindedness. And I completely agree on when we're in that direction, because I've known you for a long time. We have difference of opinions. We have conversations all the time where, you know, we're not yelling at each other. We're not like Hunter, you're stupid. Like, I don't agree with you. It's agree to disagree, or we just like, okay, like you have that opinion and I have mine, and it's what it is. But it has to do with that open-mindedness. I honestly, there's so many people who are just so stuck in their way, and it's because it's different than theirs, or it's just so, like you said, it's so like rigid, and there's this cutoff, and it's like, I can't deal with you if it's like that. And it's like, dude, we're all human, man.
Well, it comes down to pick your battles. I mean, man, you pick your battles with your kids, you pick your battles with your spouse.
Yeah.
You know, you pick your battles with people that work with you.
Yeah.
And not everybody does, but it ends up usually, I mean, I think that's a very good thing is how to know how to pick your battles. You know, sometimes you just, if it's not that big of a deal, just let it go. It might seem like a really big thing to them. So if you just let it go, you can carry on. But if you just keep digging into it, then you're going to end up hating each other. There's going to be hostility, right?
And go back to jiu-jitsu, bro.
Yeah. That's right. And by the way, when
you keep that grip on it, you don't let your arm out.
I think a while ago you said like you didn't say that, or I think you said, I don't say you're stupid or whatever, but you've called me stupid several times. But, but that's in our conversation.
But then I say I love you. You know what I mean?
I know.
So,
I think you told me, weren't you? I think you were one of the people that told me, like, was it you that said, like, you're the stupidest smart guy I've ever met or something like that?
No, but I wish I would have said that.
Something along those lines. I've heard it quite often. I'm like, it's a badge of honor for me, man.
That's funny. I like that.
I think differently. But, back to what I was saying. Now that I got that out of the way, you know, so don't be so judgy on me, everyone, whoever listens to this. But no, you know, like the education system, and I'm a huge supporter of public education, but I'm slowly kind of not, and it's just very hard. And I know it's hard for everyone in that field.
Well,
I can only imagine
5
that are in public school right now.
School,
yeah.
But you have 6 total.
Texas Tech. Well, no, my 3. Okay, so my 3 go to public. My wife's they go to Montessori.
Okay.
So, but all they're doing is teaching them how to take a test now. And it seems like that's all they teach them. But there's no like, but here's the big, and it's nobody's fault except for the state. You know, like, and I don't have an answer. You know, it's kind of tough for me to like talk shit on something when I don't have an answer. I hate doing that, but I don't have an answer. But I still like to talk shit about it, because the fact that we're in 2023, and we still believe that every student and every child learns the same way is out of this fucking world. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, but they don't. And we have all these smart people out there, way smarter than me. Like, I don't consider myself a smart person. I'm pretty fucking dumb. I'm just a little lucky, and I can problem solve. Yeah. But as far as other things, like, if you hear any big words out of my mouth, it's because my wife's taught them to me. But you know, we think that all kids should learn the exact same. And I just think that's bananas, man. It's bogus. And like, I'm dyslexic. My dad was like, I kind of hit that on that earlier. My dad's dyslexic. I'm dyslexic. We have other families. My daughter's dyslexic. But when you're dyslexic and you know, a lot of people don't understand that dyslexia is a lot of people just think, oh, you read backwards. It's like, no. A lot of people do. Yeah. But it's a very broad spectrum there. But our minds definitely work different, especially like my kids that don't have dyslexia. When I try to like explain how to do homework to them, they're like, I know they're looking at me like, what the fuck? And I'm just like, I don't know, man. That's how it makes sense to me. You know, it's totally different. But I think it's good because it's allowed me. It allows you to see, you know, problem solve differently and think differently. And sometimes people are like, because there's a lot of times people are like, man, I would have never thought of that. Yeah, you know. So I think that's helped me a lot, just the way my brain functions, and my thought process and stuff like that. But I was never good at school. I mean, I conned my way through school, like big time.
What do you mean con?
Oh, because I just conned my way through it, man. And, you know, I've always said that, you know, you'll always be successful if you can see the needs of others and be able to fulfill them. You'll be successful. Yeah. It's that easy. I'm not talking about manipulating people, you know, or
solving
being a narcissist or something.
Solving a problem.
You're solving a problem for people, you know, and if that's what they want, if it's worth something to them, then, you know, you get it. But, I mean, I was just always good at talking my way out. I mean, man, I can't tell you how many classes I failed. Like, I should have failed. And then I would be like, I would do one thing or another. I remember this one time, like,
I know what you're talking about now.
I got my mom on board with, like, she was like, you got to go to summer school. I was like, what? Why? And she's like, well, they were going to hold me back for something. Like, this is when I was like a freshman in high school, man. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, technically, Mom, did you ever get a letter home saying that I was failing? Because they're supposed to let you know. She's like, no, I didn't. And I was like, well, you're supposed to, like, sign off on it that you got it. Do they have that? And she was like, I don't know. You never brought it home. I'm like, yeah, well. And, like, I knew my mom, like, she's very good at, arguing with people and bringing up points and getting shit done that way, like, like just want to steer clear when she's doing it, right? So, so she went up I remember she went up and I was like, oh, this is the fucking best. These people don't understand what's about to happen to them, and she went up to the office and like was like, no, made this big whole argument, fight and everything. And I went on to the next grade, funny. Like didn't have to do summer school.
But I know what you're talking about because I've seen you do it. I've seen you do it. And I actually, to be honest, I thought about you when I was on my trip in San Diego just recently. Because I almost pulled a Hunter, and then I said, no, I'm okay. I'll just wait. But it's because I don't have that. And it's funny because we were waiting for brunch at this place. It was my wife and my brother, and we're sitting there, and it was like an hour and 45-minute wait. And I literally thought Hunter would say, this is bullshit. I'm going to go and talk to the hostess and pay her a little money or do whatever I need to do to get us this table. And I honestly thought about that and was like, but I didn't do it. But you did pop in my mind about it because I literally was like, yeah, he would have said, no, we're not doing that.
It's like my wife. She's always like, how do you always get people to do what you want them to do? I don't understand it. Like I would have never pulled that off, especially like places like at the DMV or whatever. She's like, what? Like I was like, oh yeah, one time I had to get something certified, whatever. I can't remember the county office or whatever, but she was like, oh yeah, we're closed today or whatever. And it's like, oh man, and like it's all about like telling like what does that person want? What do they like? It's weird because I can usually tell that when I meet new people, I don't talk a lot. I just listen, you know, and I don't know, but I got it all done. She was like, what the fuck? Like, only you. She was like, it's probably those baby blue eyes you have. Like, no, it's not.
It reminds me of Tommy Boy so much. It reminds me of Tommy when he's about the wings. And that right there. That's you, dude.
Yeah. When I like in a lot of our dealings that we've had together, like, I'm like, all right, Mike, this is what I want you to do. Yeah. And you're like, I don't know how many times you've told me you're like,
it's not typically
only because it's you.
That's
It's only because it's you.
Yeah,
and like the same thing with my dad too. I remember one time you told me, you're like, I don't know how your dad and you do this, but nobody else I know would have ever been able to do this. But your dad somehow pulled it off. And I was like, and dude, that man pulls off more shit than I do, man. And I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Like he's like, oh, I guess I'll have to call him and do it. I'm just like, I guess so, and he'll call and get it done. I'm like,
I was so scared of your dad when we were first dealing, and I was like, man, I gotta deliver, I gotta make this happen because I want to impress your dad, and it's like I want to make sure we get this done. And then it was like, but he has a soft spot too. Like he's a really like chill dude. When he's not doing business stuff. Yeah. And so it was like I got to see a little bit of that. I was like, okay, cool. Like
no, he's a good everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody likes him, man.
Yeah.
Great guy.
No, man, but that that's so I'm glad I had you on. I know we could go for another hour.
I don't care, man.
I know you don't. But right now, so we talked about the scrapyard. We haven't really got into jiu-jitsu, actually.
Do we have to?
I was thinking about it the other day. I was like man, we should put the mat right here. I don't know. But yeah. So give me, the podcast is about regular humans doing superhuman things, and I think what you do in your space, but also not just as Hunter the business owner, but as Hunter the father, husband, I think you do superhuman things. Knowing you as long as I have, and so I wanted to tell you that. And then two, thinking about future, right? Thinking about, I mean, you're 37. That's still young. So as a business owner and doing the things that you're doing, like, I don't know. You have any?
Yeah, like well, I think right now I'm just trying to, like I said, I'm in a sustain mode, but you never know what pops up. Like I'm never gonna let a wave go.
Yeah.
You know, if
Yeah.
it comes along, I'm getting on it, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm finally in a spot where like I have such a great team, and good management and everything like that, and you know the people that have been loyal to me and that I've taught are doing things exactly how I showed them how to do, and like I don't have to worry about anything, and so I'm finally getting to a point where you know I can actually enjoy my kids more, my life and things like that, because I mean, yeah, it 100% when I started Bracken, it was like, man, I was doing everything, man, out there working. Yeah. And so like a lot of my guys that have been with me for a long time, you know, they have to like tell the new guys like, hey man, this guy will get out here and do all this shit himself.
I kept thinking of the whole TikTok thing of Mr. George.
Oh, yeah.
But no, that reminded me of something when you said your people. You've talked about Dominic, and we've talked. I know other people in your office as well, and the way that you handle, I don't know, tough situations and the things that, like, we've had conversations of things that have popped up, the conversations that you have with them, like the training and the, you know, kind of just the conversation of like, working here is this, and you know, you have to be able to do that. And so like, talk just a little bit about that, because I know we have this conversation, but it's kind of like, I just want to bring it up as far as like how you approach the younger generation. You have the older, you have, guys that are, just starting, guys that have been with you for a long time, but like your approach to your people, your team.
I would say that my approach is different with everyone. And the reason being, and this is what I've taught my managers, I'm like, listen, if you think that every single person could be managed the same, you're automatically a bad manager. Just like I just talked about kids being educated, same thing. Like everyone's different. So you need to figure them out. Listen, like I said earlier, listen to people. Yeah. Listen to them, observe them, see how they act, see what they respond well to, see what they don't respond well to, and then pick your battles, and that's how you get people to do what you need them to do. And you have to be there for it too, especially with the younger generation. Like I never needed a pat on my back. I did everything for myself, but I try to teach the younger people that when I do get a chance to work with them, like outside and physically, manually, all that stuff, I try to teach them those type of values. Like, hey, when you go to bed tonight, the only person that it should matter to is you, if you did a good job or not. It shouldn't matter to anyone else. It should just matter to you. Like you going to sleep and being honest with yourself and knowing like, hey, I did the best that I possibly could today. That's the type of mentality I've always lived by. But you have to give people a pat on the back. You got to give them a cookie. You got to give them a gold star. Get them all this stuff, to make it better. And I think it's communication is, it's key. Like we preach that in the Marine Corps all the time. Like communication wins battles. Like communication wins with your kids. Communication wins with your spouse. Whatever it is. And like people say that shit all the time, but they don't really understand what it means. It doesn't mean just talking to each other.
I don't
it means learning how to communicate and how to speak the other person's language. The same thing as like men and women. We talk differently. We speak differently, you know? So it's like having those serious conversations that you don't want to have with your spouse about like, hey, when you say this, this is what I hear, you know? So if you could do, you know, same thing with people you work with and all this other stuff. It's all about communication and how you communicate with them. A lot of the, and I've told younger people that before. They're like, oh, I just don't see like I'm doing anything here. I'm like, yeah, because this is how work works.
Right.
You know, you're not going to move a mountain in 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, I get guys that come and work for me and they're like, they'll be there for a week and they'll be like, you know, young kids. And they're like, oh, I want to do that machine over there. And I'm like, whoa, you know, they're like, well, when can I do that? Yeah. I'm like, it's going to be a long time. You got to prove yourself to me first, and it's going to be a long time. I mean, you're talking about getting a machine that costs $700,000,
right? And
you think I'm just going to put you on there,
right?
And be like, have fun,
right?
You know, you definitely. Nobody wants to prove themselves anymore. They just want
give it to me.
Yeah, give it to me. They don't want to prove themselves at all, and like that takes time. And I don't think that. I don't think that, especially the younger generation. I don't think they. I know they understand that when I say it.
Right.
They understand what I'm saying.
Right.
But they haven't experienced it. They don't feel it.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know the feeling.
I think that's right. I think the feeling part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that just comes to time. So, you know, I think we're really quick to like just blame younger generation for being stupid or dumb or whatever. But you know, we didn't grow up different because we chose to.
Right.
We grew up different because it was a different time.
Yeah.
You know, and now, I mean, think about it. Like, if you hide a device from your kid until they're 18, they're going to be so far behind.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just be like, I mean, you have to regulate it and stuff, but you can't just be like, no, you're not getting this, you know?
I remember before having a kid thinking to myself, I'll never do that.
Yeah.
And I just told somebody on the plane, I was like, you know, if you give them an iPad, they probably not cry. We had a crybaby the whole flight back. And I was like, maybe if you just gave them a screen, I don't know. Like in my mind, they were little, but I was just like, give them an iPad, maybe. I don't know. So, but yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it changes. There's just different times, different things, and
I think if we understand more, and you know, I remember having this conversation with Drew when he was like 16, 17.
Yeah.
You know, he'll be 20, I think, in December.
Damn. I remember they were on the mat.
Yeah, I know. But I remember having a conversation with him, and, you know, we're dealing with, he had some attitude problem or something like that. It wasn't like a long time that we were dealing with it. It was just that moment. Yeah. That's what it was. And like, I remember sitting down and having a discussion with him, and I said, you know, there's something that I could be better at, you know, and I'm going to tell you something I could be better at. And you could tell me something you could be better at, you know, and I think if you introduce like you have faults as well,
yeah,
it helps. Because what I told him was like, we forget as adults because we have all this worldly experience, wisdom, knowledge, and we forget what it was like to be a high schooler.
Yeah.
And your brain wasn't thinking then.
Yeah.
It just wasn't, you know? And like, we're judging you, our child, we're judging you based off of how we feel now.
Right.
Instead of like looking at it and being like, you know what? It's probably a lot harder for him to make these decisions than what I'm thinking. Yeah, especially now with everything going on now.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know, that's something I can be better at, is trying to put myself in your shoes and your way of thinking. It's hard, but, you know, if you do that, it doesn't mean you have to let your kids get away with murder. I mean, wrong is wrong, right?
Right.
But you could have a little bit of tolerance with it, you know, and not be so upset at them and stuff like that. But I think that's what we forget a lot. Is like, we were all young and we were, oh God dang, I did so much. There's some friends of mine that if I had them on here, they'd be telling some stories. They'd be like, okay, time to wrap it up. Like, here we go. You know, I was rambunctious, man.
I wasn't. At all.
My wife wasn't either.
I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, I know you're kidding. Yeah.
Well, man.
So, yeah, just life, like I was saying, going back, I'm happy that I'm getting to experience some more things. Because when I started Bracken, I was working nuts.
Yeah, you were always
dude.
there.
Remember how out of shape I got?
Yeah.
Like I
have pictures.
Oh yeah, I know. You send them to me every once in a while to remind me. And I like looking at them because I'm like, fuck yeah, man, I don't look like that anymore. But
yeah.
I was just eating. So I was eating unhealthy. It wasn't just my physical appearance; it was my mental state of mind, my body itself. Like was just like shutting down eventually because I was just work. But you know, what else are you gonna do? Especially when you put all your money's on the line.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, oh shit, I got to make this.
Well, that's kind of what happened with me. Like having kids later in life, but yet, you know, you're able to still and do the things that they want to do with them and et cetera. I'm thinking in my head, like, I don't want to be 55 when she's 18 and I'm like, you know, can't do anything. And I'm like this old fogey and she's like, that's my dad. You know what I mean? And so health is wealth, right? And so it literally, and it might have hit me later than in life than you, because you've made a dress. I remember I was just talking to Julio. He was like, I didn't remember him when I saw him the second time. You know, he's like, I didn't recognize him. I didn't recognize him. And I was like, yeah, it is a huge change from where you were.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's dope, man. And I'm glad that, like,
big time,
you know, seeing you and your new family and just doing all this thing, like it's cool, man, because they see that, you know, from both of y'all. So.
Oh yeah, for sure, they do see it. And you know, I was gonna say this earlier. I don't know why this just popped to my mind. It's kind of off too, but like I don't think anyone. I tell my wife this all the time. There was no one directly in my life that I got my. There's some people that might think they were, but where I got my moral compass from and my work ethic and all this other stuff. And I tell people all the time, I honestly believe that it was all the movies that I grew up on, man.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I used to love watching old Westerns, and then even newer movies at the time. But, you know, like Roadhouse and, you know, just like.
Just be nice.
Yeah, hero movies, you know, stuff like that. And you'd see them and, like, it was always, and a lot of them are so corny now. But back then, like, we didn't have serious stuff to go off of. No. So it was serious to us, you know? Yeah. And, like, I think that it was a very big building block of my like moral compass. And
there was a show, this is too old for you, but like that where it was on HBO, and I remember the intro was
Real Sex.
No,
I saw it.
Not that one. Where the kid, they sat the kid in front of the TV. That was the intro, and like his whole life was based off of his television watching that he grew up when he was a kid. So he was later in life, and it was always referring back to like old TV shows. That's I forgot the name of the show, but that's what it reminds me of, because it's literally like we had the big box TVs, and that's what we did. We watched movies and TV, and I can recite, when you said Roadhouse, that was the first thing that popped in my mind. Was like, just be nice, you know, like what if he told, you know, that type of thing. So I can relate. I think for me though, it's like it was a little bit of that, but at the same time, my uncles, right? Like I have 5 other uncles or I have 4 uncles and an aunt from my dad's side, but seeing them operate as, you know, family unit type of thing, and just have the same morals and different principles from that family, like it just kind of like, okay, that was my example, you know.
I think it's important. And you know, we didn't even hit on what do you call them? What are they? You know, I hate
your motivation.
Yes, motivation. what
are your gurus?
Yeah, what do you call all those people, man?
I don't know. What do you call them? You call them junkie gurus?
I call them, we're making a lot of money off of you bozos.
Yeah.
Well, they're like motivators or whatever. Well,
that's what I didn't. You didn't hear me say. You didn't hear me say like, what motivates you, Hunter? Like I was going to, but I didn't want to like start that off like that. But because, I know it's not the motivation that drives you, but it's like, you know, what gets you up in the morning and it makes you want to continue doing what you do.
We've had these discussions
I know.
a lot on our own, but that's why it needs to be on air. It needs to be recorded for documentation.
So you don't
purposes.
like Gary Vee. We get it. I understand. I'll say it. You don't like Gary Vee. And when I used to watch Gary Vee all the time, you were like,
I would talk shit, and then you'd be like, you're one of those people that he tells us about. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm sure he does. Because I'm one of those guys that's going to make him stop making money.
That's hilarious.
No, I'm just kidding. But hey, if anything is good for somebody, then by all means, go for it.
I think it changes for me. Like, it's funny. Like, now it's like all these, like, fitness dudes that, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That I, just seeing what they're posting and whatever. But, yeah, it changes. Like, it's just kind of like the season.
Did you realize Hunter was right?
I mean,
you don't need Gary
I find
Vee.
inspiration everywhere. I don't need Gary Vee. I don't. But I just
think
it.
it's a lot of people make money off of just common sense, like it.
Yeah.
But I guess some people need to hear it from somebody else. I don't know.
I think it's just the way that it's said differently.
People are, including myself, like people are constantly searching for the answer.
Right.
Whatever that is,
Just do work.
But yeah, but it's like, I mean, that's easy to say, but everyone's looking for the magical pill, the day they feel like they're gonna wake up and be like, oh, voila, I see the light, and like that day's probably never gonna happen.
It goes back to working out. Like, talk about work, you work out regularly. I have been, and you talk about shortcuts. People are always looking for a shortcut. Like, well, I just want to do the surgery and I'm just going to lose all this weight, or I'm going to do this and I'm going to take this, or, they're looking for the shortcut, but it's like, you got to do the work. That's it. Like, there's no shortcut to it. Yeah, you could do that, but there's side effects, or there's ramifications for those shortcuts.
Yeah.
And I think that's true with everything, with business, with jiu-jitsu, with all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And if you just do the work and be consistent and do the things, you're going to see results. But the monotony of that right there, that they don't want to do it.
No. And that's a big thing. If you can deal with the monotony, if you can deal with it, those are the real powerful people, in my opinion.
I think so too.
Because a lot of people, including myself, it happens.
Yeah.
I'm like, I get down on myself. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Or I'm not doing as much, blah, 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 and all this stuff. But that's where you have to be honest with yourself too, like I said earlier, because like, are you really being lazy as fuck?
Right.
Yeah. Or you got to know yourself, being self-aware and things. But yeah, I hate just motivators are so annoying to me, man. Like, just motivating.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I just it's like, man, I like hearing people's stories. That's why I like your show.
Yeah.
Like, I like hearing people's stories and things like that. But like, I don't need to sit there for 2 hours and listen to somebody tell me how I should get out of bed every morning. Like, it's like, hey, like shit just happened. Like, this is life. Yeah. This is it. This is it. There's no secret thing. There's nothing like, you're not going to wake up one day and feel better from, doing this program that somebody put in front of you or made you paid for. Like, just go out and do it. And we actually, time is such a weird thing, man.
Yeah.
It always seems like it takes forever to get somewhere.
But it doesn't.
Then once you're there, it always seems like you got there so fast or too fast, It's like, just keep living, man.
It's just jiu-jitsu, man. And it's funny because I love Josh's, the saying that sticks with me is, sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail, act accordingly.
Yeah.
And it's everything right there.
Yeah.
Because, you're going to have the days where you and Dom are like, this is boring. It's not da-da-da-da. And then there's the days where you got a new machine or you got, the new whatever.
Yeah.
And, and life is good. But I don't know. It is what it is.
Yep. Just got to go through it all.
So, any parting words, sir? We've gone over an hour.
Oh, we did? Okay. If you're going to force me to get off.
I mean, we can keep going, bro. I don't know. You got to smoke.
Oh, you got stuff to do.
Well, we can always do a part 2. We can always do a.
Dude, it took you 5 years to get me to come in to do part 1. If you want to do a part 2,
it's already. Hey, part 1's done, and now it's easier for part 2 because now you've experienced it. You don't have to like it. You just have to
I'm
experience it. And
not a
then,
podcast virgin anymore.
No, you're not a virgin anymore. So,
great.
but no, man, I'm glad that you said yes. I'm glad that
but catch me in the right spot, man.
Hey, man, I was open minded. You said, hey, tomorrow. I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for Bracken. I'm excited for what's next for Hunter. Excited for you and your family. And yeah, man, can't. I'm glad to be part of it.
Yeah, you know, you talking about earlier. We talked a lot about, you know, what do you see yourself, future, stuff like that. I definitely see myself. If I start another company that's different, I definitely see myself starting it with my wife. Because she's super duper intelligent and smart, and like book smart, intelligent, like everything. And
it's a new dynamic, like when you're doing it with your spouse. I mean, your dad did that too.
Yeah.
So like, but yeah, being able to do something together and be able to work together.
Oh yeah. We'll see.
She's hey, I love Carrie. She's your yin to your yang. I tell you that.
Oh, for sure, man. Yeah, we come from different worlds, and that was really interesting how that all worked out. But like we didn't hit on it, but my military experience, like I was a PFC, a private first class. So a lot of people listening will know what that is, E2. And I got deployed. Usually you go to your unit after like advanced infantry training and stuff like that, and you go to your unit and you do a workup for a while before you get deployed. But they were like, hey, you're deploying next weekend. And we're like, oh, wow. So like we called up our families, and they flew out like last minute to come see us in California and stuff. Yeah. And then my dad sent me some beer in Iraq. And we were like on this outpost. I don't know. There's probably like 12 Marines there, like Gardens Bridge. And like I passed them out to people. And it was like 12-pack of Shinerbach. I think my aunt sent me some Tecate too. And I just passed them around. Like nobody got drunk. Nobody did any of that. And like I guess I was sleeping when we got the brief of like, hey, don't drink alcohol here. Like I was so young, man, and stupid. You know, I was like going off of old war movies. You know, you see like Charlie Sheen and things. It's like they're like smoking pot, like drinking. And it's like, yeah, this is cool, like, man.
I'm reliving Platoon right now.
Yeah. So it was my 21st birthday. So he sent me some Shinerbach and we drank it. And I got my rank taken away from me. So like I went back down to private C1. There was literally probably people coming out of boot camp that were more higher rank than me.
That's funny.
And so
Hunter right there.
Yeah, I went that way, but it actually ended up being really good for me. The way that it worked out, because eventually, like a lot of people realize, they're like, man, this guy is fucking smart. Like he's really good at figuring. He just knows a lot about everything.
Yeah.
And it ended up being really good for me. And then so I got out my last day of the Marine Corps. I picked up corporal, and I was like, fuck yeah. I wore it like with a badge of honor, man. Yeah, man. There was like this one sergeant that used to always like get on me for not saying the greeting of the day or whatever. Or like he had been busted down too so many times by the time I got out. And I remember that day I saw him and was walking, and I was like, how about good morning, corporal? How about that shit? You know, and like I was never that guy. I didn't give two fucking fucks about any of that.
Yeah.
The military worries about a lot of stuff that they shouldn't, but they need to, because not everybody is smart. And then my wife is a retired lieutenant colonel in the Army. I know. It's so wild. I would have never, if you would have told me that I'd be married to a lieutenant colonel someday, I would have been like, the fuck did I do right, man? I didn't do anything right, though.
Yeah, that's funny.
So yeah, it's been
so we can say that your wife outranks you.
Oh yeah, dude, she's definitely in charge, man. Like, Yeah, she's definitely in charge at the house, and it's crazy though, man. Like I had a general, a brigadier general at my wedding. Like,
oh wow.
oh yeah, they're like all of her friends that are still in and stuff like that. They're all like high ranked, and I'm
That's
all.
cool.
It's weird. It's kind of weird. I'm like, yeah, I was in the military too.
They're like, okay.
I always make jokes around and make them feel uncomfortable. I was like, I don't know. They didn't give us those luxuries, you know?
Yeah.
Not
Well,
the
an officer.
Yeah. You know, she'd tell me like funny stuff. Like I asked her one time, I was like, do you have a good cookie? And that's like your good conduct medal that you get. Like if you don't get in trouble, like every 3 years you get like a good conduct medal, but we call it a good cookie.
Yeah.
And I never got one, obviously. And she's like, no, sweetie. She's like, they just expect officers to behave. We don't get a little reward for it.
We don't get a pat on the back.
I know. I was like, fuck, man. Sorry.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
But so anyways, I would definitely like to start something up with her. That'd be fun. That'd be nice. But I would incorporate the people that work for me now. Like you know a lot of people, Dom, Russell, James, all them. I would always like to incorporate them with whatever company I do because it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, if they can handle it and, you know, bring them along for the journey.
Yeah.
I love people that are loyal. I mean, I tell them all the time. I'm like, man, I tell my kids this. I'm like, if you can make somebody else money, you will always be. You will always be successful, and you will always move up in the ranks. Because nobody in the right mind, I mean, some people do, but those are just bad business owners. And I mean, you got to watch out for that too, because you can go work for a bad business owner. But nobody in the right mind is going to shit can someone that is good at making them money.
Right.
It's just not. So you will always have a job. You'll always be successful. It's just not hard. Like to me, working is not hard at all. It's just so easy, and some people just act like it's like the end of the world, man. I mean, I've done nasty shit before, and as I kind of said that earlier. I think like the older guys have to remind the newer guys, you know, like, hey, he'll do this. Like everything I've ever asked anyone to do. I mean, man, everyone already knows that, right? Like everyone's heard that before. Like, oh, I'll never make you do anything that I haven't done. Willing to do myself, you know. But so many people just talk so much bullshit, you know, and like, man, I remember one of the worst. Oh God, it's so fucking horrible, man. But one of the worst, nastiest things to do. We used to buy like the aluminum cans from Floor's Country Store a long time ago. Like, because they would have like recycling bins where people would put their shit in. But you could only imagine, like, when people are drunk, going to a show, they're throwing all kinds of shit in there. And, like, we have to go through them and get it all out, man. And, like, it's just nuts. Cans are the worst. I hate aluminum cans so much, man. People don't realize what it takes to actually recycle them. But it's a great, I mean, talk about reuse. I mean, man, you just reuse it.
Yeah.
So it's a really great product. And I think the worst thing that we found in a thing of cans was a dead deer. Yeah, it was literally a dead deer.
In the container or what?
Yeah, it was like a big container we picked up from somebody, and it was full of like bags of cans. When we dumped it out, there was a dead deer in it, and it was like on the baler, and we had to like get it all. That's crazy. Yeah, man, it was pretty gross. And there's just a lot of other stuff, man.
I mean, it's also, I mean,
dude, one time my guides looked. Oh man, this was really.
I mean,
funny.
your YouTube videos, you had all this stuff that you would like show. I mean, I'm sure it's a treasure hunt thing type of thing.
Oh, I have so much cool shit.
Yeah.
Man. I have so much cool shit. I still have, because I can't decide what to do with it, but I still have like the old pirate ship ride from Fiesta, Texas. It's sitting in the back of the scrapyard.
That's hilarious.
It's not the whole ride because they had to cut it down to move it, but the whole ship is intact.
Wow.
And I'm like, man, I used to ride that when I was a kid,
That's
dude. I was
hilarious.
like, I can't destroy this thing. It's awesome. It's been sitting there probably for like 6-7 years.
I got a new money making idea for you.
Let's hear it.
You literally could have I know it's kind of, you'd have to have some type of liability insurance, I'm sure, but like,
Yeah.
is having like kind of like a museum type of thing where they you charge the kids and their families on the weekends or something to come and just like get on all the shit that you find and see it, or I don't know, like get on it like that. Like that would be cool. Like come,
Yeah.
I don't know.
If I had the space for it, I would. There's so much stuff that I
Yeah.
need more space, you know.
We needed to start looking for that.
Yeah. Well, no, I need something that's like right next to me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
it's fun. Fun destroying stuff. I love taking, like, you know, like I've taken Waylon, who's 4.
Yeah.
And like when I pick him up from daycare on my days with him, like I pick him up from daycare or preschool or whatnot, and he's like, "Can we go get on the machines?" And like sometimes if we have time, I'm like, "Yeah, we'll go back to my office.
Yeah.
Get on the machines." I let him cut cars in half,
That's
like
awesome.
destroy all kinds of stuff, take them up high. In
That's
the
my
machine.
favorite videos of yours was destroying the cars,
Yeah,
throwing stuff through the windows. So
it's a blast, man. You know, they always say you never work a day in your life if you love what you do.
yeah.
I still don't feel that way. I love what I do, but I still feel like I work.
Yeah. But that means you're a good owner.
Yeah.
So, well, I've had a blast having you on, bro.
Okay.
Appreciate you, and maybe we'll do it again soon.
Okay.
Get an update.
See you in 5 years for
5 years
2.
from now. Yeah, 100%. All right.